Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets awakening. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, your guide on this transformative journey. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Let's transcend together. Hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. I'm doing something a little bit different today. It's going to be probably a bit of a shorter episode because I've got a client scheduled and I did not manage my time well today. Shocker. If you know me, you know that that's something that I am working on and contend with regularly. And I'm still just trying to find my own structures and things in that way. So today you can see that the office door is open. I've actually got all 4 dogs in here. I have 3 around my feet, 1 to the left on the beanbag. And so if you hear the dulcet snores of a pug or a bug or a Boston, this is why. And they're all so peaceful that I can't bear to disturb a single one of them. Today, as you hear this, I will actually not be in the Salt Cave this evening, much to my surprise. This evening actually was meant to be a crash course in boundaries with then hypnotherapeutic meditation in the Salt Cave of creating heart-centered boundaries. And I guess that didn't appeal to anyone because I had no signups. And in any case, I'm almost a little content with that because that means I get to come home early from the apothecary after my client session, spend some more time with my spouse, and give myself a little bit of time to work on some business things that I really want to look at and I haven't been prioritizing. So a little bit of a change up in the schedule today, and I'm seeing that as an opportunity. And isn't it wonderful how we can do that? We can find opportunities in anything and everything. And that kind of leads into what I wanted to cover and explore today. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is what happens if you feel that you have an entity or an attachment or a lower vibrational energy either in, around, or on your being, on your person. And so other people would describe this as not being sovereign. If you caught the previous 2 episodes, you understand that a little better now. And so since creating those episodes, I've had people messaging and checking in with me and saying, hey, I feel like this is happening to me. What do I do from now until the session? Or how do I even prepare for the session? And so I thought, why not use today to have some information go out there so that if that resonates with you, you know exactly what to begin to do for yourself. 1, to prepare for your session, but also then 2, to maintain your energy in the best way possible and to help you feel a little at ease with whatever is going on for you. So it would be easy to say that it's urgent and it's important. Yes, these things have an impact on us, but the house isn't necessarily on fire. So it may feel urgent because it's an uncomfortable thought that you may have picked up an entity or an attachment or an energy. And actually, I'm having a weird kind of dissonance with all of this at the moment because I am in training, of course. I've had spirit releasement training already, and I'm deepening into it with Laura Whitworth and her soul-centered healing hypnosis. And at the same time, I'm studying a little bit of QHHT too. So it's weird to hear how Dolores had different beliefs around all of this. And so right before this episode, sometimes I do this, I like to go into my Akashic records and I ask for what would be helpful now? How can I bring forward some information that's going to be of service to those people who listen and help just convey messages that are coming from those higher dimensions that we need here now? And I was a little surprised because as I did that today, I went into my Akashic records a little differently. I did not go directly into my Akashic records this time. When I arrived there, I had the clear cognizant just knowing to say, I'm here for Trauma and Transcendence podcast. And I got a completely different opening an orientation than I usually would into my records. It's just, I'm ever learning with the records. I'm having so much fun with the Debbie Solaris class of Galactic Akashic Records. That is wrapping up next week. Next week I graduate, and it almost hurts my heart because I've been having so much fun just learning and exploring. And now today I feel like there was a whole different thing that's taken place. And so now I know that I can go into the records and there is a team of guides waiting who would like to impart things for me to bring here and to have these conversations with you. And so to my surprise, when I arrived there and saw that, Dolores Cannon was there. And I've encountered Dolores in my Akashic records before. This isn't the first time, but last time I requested it, and I didn't request it this time. I was just going in to see, hey, what would like to come through me today on today's episode so that I'm helping people. That was all I wanted. And so there Dolores was, and she began to impart to me that she is learning some things on the other side. And her view is still that entities, she doesn't believe that they were a real or created thing without our own thoughts and beliefs. Now, just briefly, when I connected with her, what I got was she's investigating over there, which is very typical of Dolores. My records are open right now, which is why it's hard to put words together sometimes. But the way she was trying to explain and show this to me is that when she worked with clients here in the physical, she didn't believe in entities and attachments. And my sensation was that's broadening for her now. And she's exploring it at a different depth. But her belief sounds like it is still that these things are thought forms. They are things that we have created with our thoughts and with our beliefs. And then today, what I was getting was that, yes, when we have created these things, it feels heavy to us. It feels big. It feels imminent. It feels important and urgent. And she was saying that it can actually get to a point where then we do need that help to eliminate those thought forms, but not only the thought forms, the ways that they got in. So if they got in from a lower vibrational emotion, some trauma that happened or an experience or something like that, that we do need to go back and clean up that entryway in, make sure that the energy is intact. And so with that, I was saying, well, Dolores, what do you recommend for those people who feel like they've got these attachments? And I am having a hard time because I've had some experiences of my own, and I've seen it with clients. And so it's hard to know the truth of it all. What I know is that what is in soul-centered healing hypnosis is effective. It does work. There are many well thought out and planned structures and procedures that I enjoy. And so I feel there's truth to that. And then I can also resonate with some of what Dolores is saying too. So I am letting myself be open and explore everything as it comes up. And so I was asking Dolores, well, what would your approach be then for someone who feels like they are navigating this, and what would your guidance be? And immediately she showed me the beautiful, bright, white, golden pyramid that we use within QHHT. And we always have the client imagine this. And so it's imagining creating a beautiful, bright, white pyramid of light around yourself. It's to cover your whole being, even the underside of your being. And to know that when you do this, that is your protection. You are safe. And you can look at healing modalities all around the world, and In most of them, they will call on that bright white light of source, that high vibrational healing energy. And so the suggestion was to see, hear, feel, know that. But then also, I saw at the top of the pyramid, channel light down in and through. And then she went on to say, yes, and some of the things that you were thinking about are accurate. So I'm going to have some mundane solutions for you, because for me, that's very important when we're talking about trauma and transcendence, is to have a very trauma-informed and grounded approach to work with healing and our spirituality and our beliefs and everything that we're doing. So we'll delve into that too. So what do you do if you think that either, whether it's a thought form or whether you believe it's something else, you're going to have to make up your own mind on that. I'm still exploring that in more depth to really dial it in for myself, but it's not my job to make up your beliefs for you. So bring your questions and I'm happy to explore them right now as well while I'm on this journey and deepening in and learning more and more. So if you have some feelings now, for a lot of people, when I talked about some of the red flags, how when we feel like we have some intrusive energy, whether it's a psychic attack or whether we feel we have an attachment or an entity, whatever you feel like it is, some of the telltale signs can be heaviness. It can be physical posture. I had an IEMT client last week. I never explained this to you. IEMT is integral eye movement technique, and it is based on several principles of things that get in the way of people healing. And with IEMT, I typically use my fingers and we guide the eyes while focusing on specific memories to dial down the emotional response and the connection to it. It doesn't take the memory away, but it changes the way that you react and respond to it and the way that you feel when you recall that memory. And so for that reason, it's wonderful for trauma, and I do a lot of it. And so last week I had a wonderful client who's very open spiritually, who does a variety of other different kinds of spiritual interventions and energy methods to clear and maintain her energy. And this is someone who's been living with someone that they love, but who is a difficult person to live with. And within that, she's working harder on self-care right now. And so right before the IEMT session with me, she had gone for, I believe she said, a tuning fork, or it was a sound healing session of some sort. I can't recall if it was tuning forks or something else. I want to say it was tuning forks. And during her session, even though she felt amazing after, she had awareness of having something within the throat and having it feel denser, having it feel a little constricted. And we were coming towards the end of the IEMT session, and we'd wrapped that up beautifully. And I said, we have a few moments. If you're okay with it, can I connect to you and muscle test this out for you? I was going to guide her to muscle test it for herself. But something in intuition just kind of said, if she does have an entity or an attachment, it could get in the way of her getting clear answers. And so she did actually give me permission to test it out for her. And so I connected, I pulled out a pendulum, double checked all of my answers and that I was clear to muscle test. And then I actually began to look at what is happening in the throat here. Now, when we do surrogate muscle testing like that, I'm a very empathic person. I can literally feel sensations in the body, emotions, any density, any tension. I will have clear audience messages of things, just word answers that apply. And sometimes clairvoyant impressions too. And so as I'm sitting there, I'm starting to have awareness and this heaviness of in the throat. And I'm like, oh, I feel that. And that was a wild moment for a minute to have her in front of me and for me to be connected and having that sensation of it happening at the same time. And it reminded me of that first spontaneous spirit releasement session in the salt cave, where that client was actually having like constriction in the heart, and this entity was like wanting to go to battle over this, and I had also felt it too. And so I don't know if I interpreted that as being a psychic attack at that moment or if that was just me empathing, but either way, um, I knew exactly what that sensation was that she'd had at that moment. And so it happened here again with this IEMT client as we were finishing up. And so I started to just double test some things and check to see what is happening. Is there an entity? What kind of entity? Is it in fact there in the throat? Is it in other chakras as well? And so we did actually find like all of the threads of energy, for lack of a better word. And I say that same thing when I'm doing energy readings and healings, is that we're kind of following like the threads of energy of where they come from, what they're attached to. And I can get a very clear idea of where something is and what's happening there without even the client having to be fully conscious and aware of it. When they are conscious of it and aware of it, and I'm then telling them, well, I followed this thread of energy and here's what I saw, heard, felt, and know, well, then it's super validating for them because it's like, oh my God, yes, that's exactly what's happening. How could you know this? And it's like one of those things of, yeah, I'm owning and embracing my weird. That's how I know. And if you'd like to, you can do it too, because we all have that potential, most definitely. And so then just a big aha moment came of, and I knew this with QHHT already, is that when we have these other energies, and I saw them when I was going through my 25 practice sessions to become certified, of some clients really couldn't get there, and it wasn't a lack of desire, it wasn't a subconscious belief, it wasn't lack of trust in me to guide them or connection between us. There was other things happening there, and it was very unsatisfying to have these things come up at some point in the session. For some, it was immediate, and for others, it was later on in the session, trying to get to the higher self to ask those answers like we do in quantum healing hypnosis technique. And so that was part of what led me to go deeper with spirit releasement, was because that bothered me, to have people want to come in for answers and solutions and have a hard time with that. I was fortunate enough to release a lot of things. I had a couple people with earthbound spirits attached to them. I had some who had dabbled with magic, and had other people dabble with magic in the name of helping them. And things did not go well and needed to be removed. And so we did that within hypnosis and within working with the higher self, which is the amazing thing about QHHT, is we can do so much there working with the higher self. And Laura Whitworth combines a lot of this higher self work into SCHH2, which is what I adore. So keeping within that vein of you accessing your highest connection and power within yourself to clear and clean up all this work. And I'm just basically guiding you along, making sure that we're hitting all of the important notes so that you can get that full clear and really be your best again and have sovereignty. Because without that sovereignty, you may have the desire to go out in the world and to do things. You may have the energy on some days, but then when it comes to doing it, you just can't get it done. Something gets in the way, or you feel that huge emotional wave of something, and then it becomes overwhelming. And I see that over and over again. All of that to say that I'm still figuring out everything I believe within this, but some of the things that you can do are bring in some of those healing practices that we were talking about. So using Dolores Cannon's golden pyramid of white light, or gold if you like, but allow it to be from the highest vibration of source that you can believe and access in. That's very important. You can use this before bed. You can use this first thing in the morning. Anytime you want to have that intention of, this is my energetic space, I am protected, it is clear, I have everything I need, I am safe and enveloped by source. I've found a lot of help and use in that overall since learning it. And sometimes I do implement it in group meditation because it's really powerful and helpful. It really creates that boundary between us and outside. And then I like to look at it from a different perspective as well. So, from the trauma informed end, we are also energetic elemental beings. We have all of the elements within us: earth, air, fire, water, spirit, or space, as are listed in some other places. Now, I thought we could go through these together. So let's start with earth. Earth for me is about earthing, it is about the physical and grounding into the body. Literally, touch grass. And I make it a point for me personally to go and to touch grass every day, to be outside barefoot if possible, if it's a safe, clean area like my backyard right next to the tree that I have a hammock in. That's something that I practice daily because it helps me expel any excess energy, any frenetic or chaotic energy that I might have picked up out in the world. But it brings me back to here I am. I am a human being in this physical vehicle, and this physical vehicle has a need to be grounded and connected to Mother Earth. So you can do the physical practices of grounding, which I highly recommend. And also, you can visualize grounding. You can do visual meditations of connecting the Earth Star chakra into the ground, because Dolores reminded me during that Akashic Record visit that we are that spiritual divine grounding rod. We are of Earth, and yet we are also of space, the ethers, the stars. We are cosmic as well. But we maintain the physical before we bring the cosmic spiritual energy in so that we have balance. And so she gave me like a quick visual that hit me right in the third eye for that. Another thing is just finding ways to be embodied. For some people, especially if they're healing from PTSD or trauma, it's important to get out of the head and to not be dwelling or stewing in emotions, but to actually move things through the body. So whether that is a physical stretching session for yourself, you're doing a little bit of yoga, or you're going for a run or a walk, or just diving into dance and feeling wonderful, or perhaps becoming mindful of the body. Something that I love to do when I remember to do it, and that is the hardest part of all spirituality, is remembering to use the tools. I still struggle with this. It's a practice. So don't shame yourself if you have a hard time putting things into actual use. It's very human. When we do practicing a self-body scan, not necessarily to look for anything, but instead to just be in my body and to see what feels like what where, and what might be happening there. What energy is present there. I got a Galactic Akashic reading the other day as part of a practice group for the certification, and I've been having some right knee pain again. It's kind of kicked up out of nowhere. And I thought that when I got back to a ketogenic lifestyle and had higher ketones and less inflammation, that it would dissipate, but it was still there. And so I'd asked, as part of the practice, to the reader that I was working with, what is this? Why is this still here? And so she, within the records, connected a little more deeply and said, oh, you have stuck energy. It's like a little bit of a knot. It's going to come apart easily, but it's stagnant energy that needs to go out. So clearly, I need a little more movement. And then I had asked her, what do I need to move the stagnant energy through? And it turns out that it's right in alignment with me getting Kundalini Reiki attunement on Sunday. There's a reason my body wants that ignition of Reiki energy again. It needs it to help me move and manage my energy a little better. So, interesting timing for things, but it's that awareness of sitting within the space of the body and saying, what is happening here? What is this trying to draw my attention to? For some, when we think about the knees, that could be a fear of moving forward. It could also be the body's means of slowing us down. By now, you're starting to know me. You know that when I take things on, I tend to bite off more than I can chew. And I love to learn. And so I bounce from thing to thing, exploring and having different perspectives of things. And I find that wildly enriching. Turns out, by the way, that comes from me being Andromedan, is a star seed, as well as Lyran and Arcturian. But that aspect of it is the Andromedan energy that I wasn't aware of. And I need to learn to manage better. So that's what I'm working on. It's just interesting to hear that that's where that came from. Um, it's fun. It's such a fascinating world. But so sometimes the knees can actually act in a way of, hey, kiddo, you are doing a lot. You are going fast. How about you slow down and actually digest and ground this energy in that you are consuming? Let it actually land before you start delving into other things and exploring. So that can be another message for the knees too. Usually it's about our movement. Are we, too stuck in a certain belief or way of living, a habit or a pattern? Is it time to move forward? Are we being held back, or is the body trying to push us in a different direction? So very much that with the knees. And for me, I guess that's where I'm storing my energy currently. I'm grateful that I'm not storing it in the neck or shoulders anymore. um, and I think part of what I'm needing to learn is to balance and manage my energy more, having more downtime when I'm not thinking or consuming content or creating content, and actually more being is what my body is possibly looking to tell me. I'll let you know after Sunday how the Kundalini Reiki affects me and how it helps me to manage what I find as I go through that new experience. I haven't had a Reiki attunement in over a decade. So it's wild that my body wants this. And I became aware of my body wanting this because every time I saw it on social media, I'm keenly aware that the teacher didn't actually matter because there were several different ways that I could have done this, but it was like higher self was saying, you need this. Doesn't matter why. And you're either going to do this in May or you're going to do this in July, but you are going to do this. It's like, okay, I yield. Not sure what that's about. I'm going to go find out. I will keep you posted. But that too is part of Earth and listening to higher self when it comes in of what do you need? I can't remember what author or public speaker talked about this, but before you put your feet on the floor in the morning, actually check in and say, what are my physical needs today? Did I get enough sleep? Am I eating whole foods that are nutritious and actually giving me the macro and micronutrients that I need? Right? Am I getting enough sunlight? Am I living in a space that feels safe and secure? And so bringing it back to trauma informed, for those of us that have been through trauma, there may be a tendency to hoard or collect things and to have a lot of things in our space because it feels like a barrier. Sometimes we do that with weight as well. And it's not an effective tool anymore. There may have been a time when it was effective, but now it's just in the way. And so if you feel like you are contending with some of these energies currently and you're waiting for a clearing, or to have a session with an SRT practitioner, some of the first things you can do is begin to clear and cleanse your space. You know that saying of cleanliness is close to godliness. That is very accurate. So doing both, removing the clutter, purifying the space around you. I like to think about that as earth, maintain and take care of this physical vehicle in that way. And that's a very big first step for me and possibly for you. The next is air. How often when we're going through things do we forget to breathe? And not just a regular breath, but an actual slow yogic 3-part breath that's very calm and nurturing. We have oxygen within our blood cells, and we need to reoxygenate regularly. The breath is essentially the remote control to our body, to our nervous system. And it doesn't work so well when we forget to use it. And so, not just taking the time to breathe deeply, to breathe well, but to breathe really clean, clear, crisp air out in nature where there's fresh oxygen being produced and let off by the trees. That's so important. Another element could be to smudge your home, your space, and open up the windows and let stale air out and some fresh air in. You may want to consider air filters for your home to help clear up some of the pollutants. And you'll know because you'll have those allergy type feeling symptoms in the back of the nose and the back of the throat and things like that. But smudging actually can clear and cleanse the actual air and impurities in the air. For protective, I would say rosemary, lavender, cedar can all be very effective. Sage, of course, and Palo Santo. But I like rosemary when it comes to possibly working with attachments because it's very protective in nature and it's got a nice aroma when you let it off around the house. Eucalyptus is another one. Bay leaves are helpful too. Basil, you hear of that quite a bit. All of these dried, of course, so that they're easier. But actually clearing the air and having that intention to cleanse the air in a space so that it's a little more oxygen rich and then has less of those impurities. Fire. For me, fire is several things. It's literally going out and getting that vitamin D in the sun. And if you can do it in the morning and at night as well, going out as the sun is setting and things like that, it's wonderful for the circadian rhythm. It's wonderful to get your body back into those cycles. And when we do that, we have a chance to really be present within ourselves and to connect with the greater world around us. I think sometimes when we have these entities, these lower vibrational things, as you heard last week when we spoke to Michelle, the hardest, worst thing is the isolation, is feeling cut off from other people, like you can't talk to them about your experiences or they won't understand. So connecting, and do it with universe and sunshine and source first. Another thing with working with fire, for me, I think of the violet flame. I think of that inner transmutation that can happen when we work with the violet flame and either Saint Germain or Metatron. For me, Archangel Metatron is the one who comes forward to help me do that when I'm working on chakra clearing myself. He always pops up right at the end, and that's because I often forget. It's just a grace that he's like, I'm right here. Don't you dare leave without doing this. Though, so having that intention to purify, to sanctify, we can burn away impurities, not on the physical body, obviously, but energies. And so some of that can actually be getting things out, writing them down. One of the favorite things I love to teach clients is a brain dump. If you are feeling flooded with past emotions and memories and things coming up, write them out. Write out the feelings that you can identify, label them, use a good emotion chart. I like the one specifically from Nonviolent Communication from Marshall Rosenberg. That is my favorite chart to work with. You can find it online by Googling or by searching for it. Sounds True actually is offering an NVC class currently. Highly recommend that. Of course, I signed up because I love to coach clients around it, and it's something that I use for myself. It's emotional mastery, which is something Laura Whitworth talks about as well. And we'll talk more about that in a minute when we get to water. So getting things out of your mind. When I think of air, I think of the mind. I think of the thoughts, the things in the ether that we are about to manifest into the physical. Get them out of your mind, get them on paper. And if you do it with pen and paper, something wonderful happens when we put pen to paper. And we really can remove things from our thinking and begin to see them from a different perspective. So when I do a brain dump, I get it all out on the paper first. It's really messy looking. And then I start to identify the emotions that are coming up. And if that emotion was a messenger, what is it asking me or informing me that I need? I view it as a friend, a messenger. And I have a policy of not shooting the messenger. And so when those things come up, I then decide if I'm experiencing anger, did I lack a boundary somewhere, either with myself or with someone else? And what is that anger telling me that I want to do? I need to create a boundary. Whether that's within a situation or just for myself, that is what's being called for. If I feel a wave of anxiety, which seldom happens, but it does, and that's something that occurs frequently with attachments and entities and thought forms, is we have that ruminating feeling of something's coming or something's wrong, or I'm not going to have enough or be enough or do enough as I am, right? That song of there must be something wrong with me begins to play. That is when I actually really like to write it all down, get it on the paper, identify the emotions, and begin to think, what is anxiety wanting me to know? It is wanting my survival. It is trying to protect me by showing me the things I may need to take action on. And so I will write it out of what action steps am I being called to do. If there's nothing that I can do, then I choose the route of surrender. And we'll talk about surrender in a coming episode. It keeps coming up, and it is a very important one that I want to share. So that's what I like to do with fire. As an element, but also when we write all those things out, you don't have to keep them. You can release them as part of an act of transmutation as well. Let's move to water. Water is absolutely, and you're going to hear me harp on this every time, it is your electrolyte balance, making sure you have good quality water, that it's got sodium, potassium, magnesium in the right ratios, because that is so important. We are electrical beings, and for that to work and conduct well, we need that balance of electrolytes and water, because it conducts. It's conducive. Other than that, I view water as being emotion. So, are you holding on, suppressing emotion? Do you actually need to cry? Do you need to make a sound or a physical posture to let it out, to enact it, to embody it, to release it, to make it move and flow and change? Oftentimes I find that I do. And we see this with little kids all the time. When something's not going their way, they'll ball up their fists, they'll stomp their feet. They're so intuitive. They already know how this vehicle works, and they know it better than we do. They'll be super expressive when the tears are coming down, and you can see their little hearts are just feeling it all. We need to do that sometimes too. I'm not saying cry is a response to everything, but when it's appropriate, sometimes we need to sit and feel the feelings and to, instead of holding on to them, process them, let them out, move them through. And that's so, so important. The more emotionally aware you are as well, the more emotionally intelligent, the more you have that self-awareness, the better, the less likely you are to take on other people's stuff. Whether that is a psychic attack from somebody verbally because they have an entity that's attempting to jump out of them and into you. And so they're trying to get you caught up in some kind of drama or anger or frustration. I see this happen more and more, and I was never so aware that was what was happening, but I had seen somebody do that at a psychic fair directed at me, and I thought, wow, I don't even know this person. Where is this coming from? I think that's what that was. I think that was a little bit of darkness from somewhere attempting to hijack and disrupt my progression with things. It got in a little more than I wanted it to, but not as much as it could have. I didn't get infiltrated, which was important to me. But the more that we're emotionally aware, the less likely we are to buy into other people's beliefs or feelings or judgments about us. And that's extremely important. If you know that you are going through this, reduce aggravating situations for yourself. If you have that one friend who's going to be a test of your boundaries all the time, spend a little less time with them until you can get yourself cleared and sovereign again. And then afterwards, maybe that'll be a whole other episode that we talk about of what to do after you've had a spirit releasement session or a clearing or become sovereign, how to protect your energy better. Let me know if that interests you. But moving yourself out of those situations that you know might be triggering away from those people who may cause you to shame spiral or have an emotional flashback or feel insecure or insignificant in some way or emotionally wounded. Stay out of those. If you don't need to, don't do that to yourself, right? So that's another way that I like to look at water. Spirit is different. We can view it as spirit. We can view it as spaciousness. In one of the Tibetan books that I have on healing, and I can't recall the title just now, he talks about spaciousness as being a resource, and there is something powerful. Yes, we get embodied, we connect to earth, we take care of all that's within, but there is something powerful about going to the ocean and realizing the insignificance of your size compared to the vast ocean or the never-ending sky. And sometimes we do need space, and that can be that physical space. That's why we talk about decluttering and getting things out of your way. Sometimes it's emotional space, to not have too many feelings, trying to process through all at once. Sometimes it's mental space. So we look at meditating, we look at quieting the inner voice to have some peace. Space can also be actually connecting to cosmic energies outside of ourselves, feeling this spaciousness, knowing that there is something greater beyond and we are connected to it. Allowing that bright, beautiful light to come through, but then also there's the concept of the void. And this happens sometimes in hypnotherapy sessions where clients go into a place of blackness. And I brought it up last time talking about, I wonder if that's how the baby feels in the womb when it's just black and there is nothing but space and eternity out there right before they're born and they know what's happening. Children now, I think, are starting to remember that. I just watched, or at least I started watching Joe Rogan's interview with Terrence Howard. Oh, amazing. He's got memories from being in utero and all the way through. It's amazing how we're evolving now. It just blows my mind. In any case, I went off on a tangent and got lost. But space. And so being held in space, as I was thinking about that, that's part of the reason that I love doing the sensory deprivation float tank, is because you remove the sensory and then you're just floating within that warm water, contained and held within space and the void. And so when clients go to the void sometimes in hypnosis, whether it's past life regression or QHHT, sometimes it happens even with between lives, soul regression as well. It is often a reminder for them to have a sense of space and where they exist within it. Often it's an opportunity to see things unfolding before they've incarnated or after they've incarnated. And so there's that moment where they are just in the void of blackness and nothingness. Sometimes they're moving on their way to the light or from the light and feeling that feeling of connection and the all of the light, that all-encompassing feeling of, oh, this is who I am, this is what I am, this is where I belong to, this is what I'm a part of. And then we come into earth, and then we have ego that keeps us safe and protects us and gives us our own identity to have these experiences. And then afterwards, we move out of the body and we move out of ego. Ego literally dies with the body. And we move back through time, through space, into that void, waiting perhaps for the next incarnation, or maybe we're making our way back to source. It's an interesting experience, but I feel like sometimes we have that need to be held within space. Tony Robbins, and this is what happens when I do things with my records open. I keep having all these inspirations and thoughts unfold. Tony Robbins came up with a list of human needs. On the list, there was the need for certainty, but there's also the need for uncertainty. And I feel like when we're experiencing the void, isn't that a little bit of both? That need for uncertainty, but at the same time knowing that regardless of what happens, we are held and spiritually we are safe. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I feel like that's kind of like what that is. In any case, I did pull some cards from the Doreen Virtue Goddess deck on this topic as well. And the first one I pulled is White Terra. You're not going to be able to see these well because they are holographic, but White Terra is about sensitivity. You are becoming increasingly sensitive. Avoid harsh relationships, environments, situations, and chemicals. So I had already addressed reduce aggravating situations, but less is more. Clear your space around you and be aware of how things are affecting you. And if you see that something is affecting you in a negative way, reduce contact with that to give yourself more time to process the energies within while you're waiting for your session. And so that can be eating more whole foods, making sure you're getting water and nutrients and resources from the right places. Avoid crowded, unspacious places where you can. I think that plays a factor too. The less likely you are to be in public around a lot of people, the easier it is to manage your own vibration. Keeping your vibration high at this time is one of the best and most important things you can do. So I recommend going back to that episode and exploring that again if you need reminders on how to work with your vibration and to raise vibration, because that plays a role too. And then think about it within the elements. Think about, how do I raise vibration for each element, for earth, air, fire, water, spirit, or space within you. Next, we have Mary Magdalene with unconditional love. Love yourself, others, in every situation, no matter what the outward appearances be. If somebody does manage to come and to try to hijack or trigger your emotions, avoid going to that place of judgment or gossip or shame or guilt, and instead practice unconditional love of, I don't necessarily agree, or perhaps I do agree with what they're saying, but I'm doing the best I can. And so I'm just going to choose to love myself through this situation and trust that whatever is happening over there, that perhaps there is also unconditional love behind it. And that we don't have to take it all in as being personal either. We can allow some detachment there and really focusing on the opportunity of every situation and having it be part of the lesson, part of the journey, rather than condemning you to feel a certain way or holding a certain vibration within you. I found this one interesting. It is Ein with leap of faith. And I don't actually consider leap of faith. When I see this card, what I feel like, the card actually says, take a risk, put your heart's true desire into action. I feel like this is about trusting. Trust that you can find the right practitioner, clear yourself, become sovereign, and that it's all kind of working for you, that you're going to be learning something. But also, don't hold back on the things that you want. Become aware of your desires and move towards them. Don't stop living just because you think you may have an entity or an attachment. Don't stop putting efforts into things that are important to you, whether that's a relationship or a situation or something you're trying to learn or grow or bring out into the world. Still do those things because you're going to be higher vibration for doing so. So it has importance in that way. The next one is Una, and it's easy does it. With easy does it, there is no need to hurry or force things to happen. Everything is occurring in perfect timing. And so I do feel like there is a divine timing of things. Of course, I do, especially with how things have been going lately with all of these spirit releasement sessions popping up just as I'm committing to learn this more. Like opportunities, there's no shortage lately. I have actually started a wait list for who I'm going to work with when I'm ready to start the certification sessions for Laura's program. And it's people who genuinely need to be cleared and to come back to sovereignty. But there is that element of trusting that things are by design, that you're going to find the right resources at the right time and everything's going to line up. You don't have to force it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to push or control, because when we try to do those things, that's also low vibration. Remember, we're keeping vibration high. The other thing is easy does it. For me, that also signifies rest. Take time to rest. If you are contending with something within you, it is consuming vital energy, and you may need a little more rest. Don't feel bad about taking an extra nap if you need a nap, or signing up for less things than you ordinarily do. Taking some time to really self-care is a big point of self-care in all of this, I find. And that's why when we went through the elements, there were several aspects of self-care there too. Another one that came up, and the final one, is I assist past life. And I almost put this card back in the deck because I'm like, wait, what? And then I had remembered listening to one of Laura Starr's programs. I think it was her astral travel class, where she was talking about archons, but also how sometimes entities can come from past life connections. We can have contracts that were made and carry into this life. And if that is the case, you're not doing anything quickly. You may need to do some of that work with past life regression to find out where these things anchored on, what the contract is, and then begin to release them. So it doesn't make it so urgent that you have to push and try to control and get things done and fixed right now. You can slow down, focus on self-care, keeping your vibration high. And then as part of the process, it can be that you have to do that past life work, right? And so after a couple of minutes of sitting with it and reading, this situation involves your past life memories. I remembered that little part of it, and it's like, And so some of us have incarnated with these energy attachments or contracts. I think they were called dark contracts when Laura spoke about them. And so that's something to consider too as part of all of this when we're doing this work. And that's why I like the way that Laura Whitworth does the spirit releasement, because when I do spirit releasement in the way that I was taught, we don't usually bring past lives into it. But with Laura Whitworth, she does. And so her protocol includes past life. And so that felt kind of validating and satisfying for me when I pulled those cards, and it's like, this is part of it. According to the goddess deck, they want this to be incorporated because it has immense importance and can be an area that would be underexplored otherwise. Other things, raising vibrations. So prayer, honestly, setting intention and offering things to your guides of, you know what, this feels too heavy to carry right now. I'm going to offer this to you to hold for me until I can either process it or perhaps I don't even need it back. I've already learned the lesson and I'm holding on to stagnant energy like my knee. Um, the things like that. So little bits of prayer, setting intention for yourself, taking time to scan your body and to feel what's present. What am I feeling right now? What are my needs? What is my highest priority for self-care? Asking those questions, being well hydrated, being well rested, all of those things matter, especially before your hypnosis appointment, whether you're doing QHHT and trying to access higher self or whether you're coming for the entity clearing first. I recommend clearing the entities first so that if there's anything in the way, whether it's a thought form like Dolores thinks it is, or whether it's dark forces like other practitioners think, I'm still exploring and trying to understand it more deeply for myself. You can come to your own conclusions there, regardless of which it is. We want to keep the vibration high. You want to be rested and at your best for your session. So, depending on the style of session, I might recommend you have a good nutrition dense meal. Not something that's going to be too heavy. You might want to avoid caffeine. And there are things you can do like working on breath, just breathing. You can even have a visual for yourself as you're breathing. I like to do a 3-part breath and think about the ocean. The waves coming in, the stomach expands, you expand into the rib cage, breathe all the way up to the collarbones from the bottom of the abdomen if possible. And then, like a wave receding back into the ocean, the ribs come in, the breath goes out from the lower part of the stomach, then from the rib cage, collarbones, and everything else, creating those natural waves and flows. That's funny. As I was thinking about that, I was seeing the visual that Julia Cannon does with her hand and the infinity symbol going out and in and out and in. But you can do this with the breath, with the body. And as you do that, you're doing so many things. You're being embodied, you're managing your vibration, you're connecting perhaps to something higher than yourself, surrendering, releasing, pulling in any hope that you need, managing your energy all around. And then that little bit of visualization is powerful because you're kind of stoking the neurobiology that is needed within hypnosis, allowing yourself to imagine being there in the spaciousness of the vast ocean, the waves going in and out. When the waves come in, they bring to you resources and goodness, unconditional love. When the waves go out, they take with them any lower, dense vibrational energies, any heavy emotions that you're trying to process through, anything that you can let go of, and trust that universe or Gaia or Earth knows how to contend and take care of those energies and transmute them. So that was my thought to share with you today. Here we are already at the hour. I didn't think this was going to be a full episode. uh, I could have talked about more things still. But if you're waiting for a session or to explore hypnosis and to do some clearing for yourself to come back to sovereignty, those are simple things that you can do for yourself. As you heard me reference, and something I wanted to talk about more and ran out of time with, muscle testing. You can muscle test. If you're unsure, if you are clear and going to get clear answers, you can test around that, or you can ask someone to surrogate test for you, assuming that they are clear as well and well hydrated. That's so important for so many things. This is where I leave you. Hopefully you found this insightful. This gives you some hope and things to focus on while you are waiting to be clear and become sovereign once again. Or maybe for the first time in this incarnation for some of you. God, it's fascinating. I never have a dull moment over here. But as always, I'm wishing you bright blessings and bye for now. Thank you for joining us on this transformative episode of Trauma and Transcendence. Your stories matter. I would love to hear them and from you. Connect on our website, healingbeyondtrauma.com, or drop me an email at amanda@healingbeyondtrauma.com. Remember, healing is a journey we take together. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired. This is Amanda, wishing you bright blessings.